breaking this morning, for the first time, former Vice President Kamala Harris reveals her thoughts about President Biden's decision not to run for re-election. The Atlantic just published excerpts from her new book. She writes, quote, "It's Joe and Jill's decision. We all said that like a mantra, as if we'd all been hypnotized. Was it grace or was it recklessness? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness. The stakes were simply too high. This wasn't a choice that should have been left to an individual's ego, an individual's ambition. It should have been more than a personal decision." Now, on the other hand, she challenges the notion that there was a White House cover-up. She writes, quote, "Many people want to spin up a narrative of some big conspiracy at the White House to hide Joe Biden's infirmity. Here is the truth as I lived it. Joe Biden was a smart guy with long experience and deep conviction, able to discharge the duties of president. On his worst day, he was more deeply knowledgeable, more capable of exercising judgment, and far more compassionate than Donald Trump on his best."
That's where I disagree. And not that he was more passionate or intelligent or politically savvy than Donald Trump or any of that shit. But what I get upset about and what I hear way too much of is that everything's better than Trump. A dead dog's better than Trump. This is better than Trump. Well, if everything is so much better than Trump, why didn't we win? Why didn't we figure out a way to beat this dude? Why is he in the White House right now? Because apparently Biden wasn't good enough to beat him. And Kamala come along, who was supposed to be the stronger candidate, and that didn't happen either. And now the truth is beginning to come out. And we get to see what was going on behind the scenes, a sliver of it. Not much more than that, because they don't want you to know the full truth, because she may have political ambitions going into the future. I would I hope not, honestly. I don't think she has anything good to offer us as a country in a position of leadership. For her to sit here and say what she's saying right now is something she should have just taken to her grave rather than sell it in a book. In 3 months, this lady raised over $1 billion for her campaign. $1 billion. That would be from donations, corporations, and the like. Unions, anybody who supported her, newspapers, to kick in some money and get her across the finish line. And it mounted to right about $1 billion in 3 months. 3 months' time, $1 billion Kamala Harris was able to raise. And she wants to write a book and sell to you what your donations and your support should get for free. She should get on a goddamn mic in an auditorium somewhere and spill her guts and quit bullshitting and trying to make a dime off of more lies. And then we turn around and all we talk about is Donald Trump making money off his position as they all do. If you ain't the president, nobody's going to buy your book. If you ain't the president, ain't nobody going to turn and listen when you speak. Everybody understands what kind of attention that position receives. And Trump is no different, and neither is Kamala. But I just feel in a losing position, losing that election to Trump, and then trying to go forward with, like, you got some privileged information and you're going to sell it to us in a book. I just think that's messed up. Especially having been a public servant, having lived off these donations to fuel your campaigns, your dreams, your aspirations, and then you want to turn around in the end and keep it closed off unless somebody's willing to step up and pay for that information that I think they deserve for free. And they deserve the truth as well, because a lot of that is just straight bullshit, just so that it's trying to let us know that there was some discourse, but nothing out of line or nothing. We're still a strong party, and that's just ridiculous.
But at 81, Joe got tired. That's when his age showed in physical and verbal stumbles. I don't think it's any surprise that the debate debacle happened right after 2 back-to-back trips to Europe and a flight to the West Coast for a Hollywood fundraiser.
Which is just a bigger argument for older people getting out of the race. There may be even more daunting times than that physically. And what is he going to do? Oh, I just got back from Brazil and Egypt, and I'm tired. Yeah, you old. Get younger people in there who have the physical and mental stamina to do that job. Maybe he is a good dude if he's well rested and you catch him at a perfect part of the day, but it's a stressful job. It's a job that requires you to go from 0 to 100 multiple times in the course of a day. And he ain't capable of it. And why can't people just say that shit? And we should have disqualified him. She will not admit that there was some conspiracy to hide anything from the public because that would implicate her. She'd be a part of it. So no, there was no conspiracy, but she's spilling her guts where she feel is safe to. But if you just look past that, you'll see that there were some problems. You wouldn't even be including any of this in a book. It's really not that big of a story, to be honest. You lost. Who gives a damn? And you will never be in a position to run again because you can't win a primary. And she should have taken it back further. Don't act like you guys just realized that something was wrong with Joe Biden because Trump mopped the floor with him in that debate. You guys knew way before that. You knew. Hell yeah, you knew. But you're willing to pull the wool over our eyes, pretend that you guys were all in and Biden, yeah, and all this. And then when he got in that damn, oh my God, yeah, that's when you guys realized we can't even hide it anymore. We were able to hide it behind the scenes and do what we could do to make him look like he was still president, but no one can debate for him.
I don't believe it was incapacity. If I believed that, I would have said so. As loyal as I am to President Biden, I am more loyal to my country. Let's get right.
Yeah, and that's important. That everybody has that feeling that they're more loyal to country than they are to the president. But if that was true, and you realize that he was getting tired, you would do something about it. You'd be like, "Look, Joe, you're gonna have to show us or something that you have the stamina for this because we're in some very trying. Ukraine's being attacked. Israel got shit going on over there. We need to know that you with us. Are you locked in, buddy? If he ain't shit, you got to do what you got to do. You ain't got time to be trying to be his friend. And that it was something going on and is something going on between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris behind the scenes. Him picking her had nothing to do with them being close or friends or anything. Him picking her was a safe black person that he could put out there, garner some black support, and basically help his ticket. And he could have done it with another black person, but that DEI shit that he pulled with her backfired in their faces because ultimately they just handed over everything in the next election. I mean, that means you didn't do a good job in Congress. You didn't do a good job on the executive branch level to be able to win enough elections to at least be able to fight back.
CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers and Maura Gillespie, former press advisor to then House Speaker John Boehner. Bakari, first to you. That first almost mea culpa, saying recklessness not to question Joe Biden's decision to run again. What do you see there?
No, I think it's right. And I think that many of us throughout this campaign, I came on the air many times over and over and over again, said that it was Joe Biden's decision whether or not he was going to run for president again. It wasn't for Jon Stewart or the Pod Save America guys or anybody else to push him out the race. It was literally his decision to make that choice. And I think what she's saying is that in hindsight, yes, it was his decision, but more people should have been involved in that decision-making process.
That's not what she's saying at all. Ain't no more people. We know how the government works. And if you have to remove a president, what the steps are. It's either Congress or I think there's an amendment that the vice president can invoke and remove him. But it takes Congress to get involved. And they didn't get involved. They didn't. The Democrats didn't turn them over and say, look, you can't do this, man. This ain't going to work. And you're talking about re-election and was pissed off at folks he still ain't speaking to because they decided against him running for a second term. And he was mad. Probably don't even remember. But at that time, he was pissed. because it's a big blow to your ego. Presidents have big egos. You're the president of the fucking United States. You don't want to put somebody else tapping you on the shoulder. You be like, "What's going on?" But hey, no, sir, you're going to step down. Step what? I ain't stepping shit down. I'm running again. Sir, you're not. We don't think, I didn't do that bad in that debate, did I? But he was all delusional and shit and all kind of shit going on in his head. I personally believe that the right thing happened. Had Kamala Harris won, imagine where we'd be as a country. Lulled back to sleep. Immigration issues growing bigger with no fix. No, do you think the Democrats would have came in and attacked the immigration issue and not given up until they resolved it with the help of the Republicans, come to some agreement where we can have some laws in our country so we don't have to hear one side or the other talking about you're discriminating against them. They're abusing the laws of the country and the resources could the Congress make our lives better by resolving this shit? If Kamala Harris had won, can you guys imagine it would have just been an extenuation of or an extension of Joe Biden's term? There's nothing would have changed. She got point blank caught with that question, and she was like, "No, can't think of that not change." That was a dumbass answer, but it was the truth. It was the truth. The people behind the scenes liked the way things are going for whatever reason, and they wanted to keep them going that way. And this dude disrupted a whole lot of shit, but he gave us all the opportunity to understand this is going to be rebuilt. This stuff is going to be restored or replaced. And this would be a wise time for us to understand what was really taken away. What harm did it really do to our lives over here in the United States? And should it be something we fight to get restored or replaced or just left alone? Because that's just what it come down to. And man, Trump is like fucking just moving aggressively as a president. He's been at the top of more news cycles in the time he's been in office than Joe Biden did in his whole 4 years. Good, bad, whatever. He is in the conversation and he keeps pushing news cycles out there. And will he be able to overcome this Epstein thing? Are there scandals coming on top of this? The thing that disheartens me is that we have had, 9 months at a guy who is supposed to be the worst president ever. The worst. And in 9 months, the only blow that, in my opinion, that we have landed on the chin, that's got him, looking a little disoriented, a little wobbly, is the fact that he talked a whole lot of shit about releasing those Epstein files, and he ain't done it. And he's obviously avoiding doing it. Speculating on whether he in them or not, or how he's in them. He making that shit more clear each day as he stalls this. But that's his thing. And he's fighting hard for it, but that's the only thing, in my opinion, that the Democrats have landed solid. And that's not something that they campaigned or forecasted or promised. They didn't say during the campaign, when Trump gets in office, he ain't going to release No, they were saying he was going to blow up the country. The democracy was in jeopardy. And they had all kind of stuff. But this came out of nowhere, which is how shit goes. But is it going to be maneuvered properly to really, give him maximum damage? Or is it something that he's going to be able to, just by staying busy and keeping all the chaos going around the world, is something going to pop up that's going to just push that Epstein shit to the side, and people are going to be like, look, we got a war to fight, or we got a government to run, or we have something that we have a crisis, because Trump likes to operate on crisis. People don't get a whole lot of time to sit and deliberate. In some cases, it don't matter whether they deliberate or not, because when you move things up to the level of emergency, you get to make the decision. Sorry, folks, I like to have your input, but it's an emergency. So we got to make the call for you. It's what you elected us to do.
Yes. It wasn't the kind of circular firing squad that Democrats had, which proved to be reckless in itself, but it was the fact that more people should have been allowed in Joe Biden's inner circle so that we could have a decision. Because I think that we should have fully grasped that it was more than one person's ego; it was a country at stake.
Which is what we're doing now. We went from one white man with a big, huge ego to another white man with a huge ego. And we keep pretending like this shit is a fucking sporting event and trying to size them up and, do point spreads on them and figure out who's the nicest and who's the most compassionate and who's the smartest. And the country has been handed over now 9 months ago, and ain't nothing really changed to the point of where you can say, man, Trump has really improved, where people get up and go, wow, isn't it nice now? Can't nobody say that shit. And can't nobody get up and say, wow, the country's just horrible. He got rid of U.S. aid and the country's just going to shit. And there's 3 times the amount of homeless people now that Trump's in. Can't say that stuff because that shit ain't true. This country has a way of making it this way. And I do believe that as far apart as they come off as being, they're not. They couldn't be. Trump makes it look like that we're really far apart coming in just doing the shit he doing. I don't know why most presidents don't do executive orders. I wouldn't deal with the Congress on a lot of issues. Some things are executive orders. It's your right as the elected president to be able to move forward on some things in even in creative and unique ways to show your people who elected you that you're fighting for them, that you're doing what you said you was going to do, and you're not going to stay safe. And it's such psychology going on where they fool people into believing they're fighting for you when they're not fighting for you, and that they're against you when they're not against you. It's a very complicated political system here in the United States. That's why I believe that certain groups should withdraw from it or disengage as heavily as we are, and back off a little bit and be a little more self-serving and pay more attention to how we look in the mirror, and then we can re-engage appropriately and not as symbols of leadership and symbols of direction when we're not at all. We're being directed. We're in executive positions, but we're being directed as if we're not, and using the democratic way of thinking, as for doing this stuff. And Kamala, write a book, don't write a book, whatever. We know how much of that stuff is not true. A lot of it, and nobody makes lying palatable. Trump, Kamala, Biden, me, nobody. If you're not telling the truth and you're talking to your folks, and that doesn't make it nice. Like, oh, it's just different when Kamala says it. Donald's trying to hurt people. Kamala isn't.
Maura, what do you think of what she said about had she believed he was incapable of doing the job, she would have spoken up?
I do think she's curtailing it a little bit to, protect the fact that she still is loyal to Joe Biden in a lot of ways. She served as his vice president. I'm sure he also recognized that the position she was in, having been a vice president prior, and knowing that, the staff can be brutal at times because it's easier to put the blame on the vice president than it is to accept any blame as the president. But I do think it's interesting, and I'm curious to.
That is true. It's very true what she just said. But it's also up to Kamala as an individual to have something about herself that stands out, that makes her a little different when you're coming into the position of running for the president's office. At that point, he's not your rival, but you can't let him hamstring you or get in your way, or his people or his policies or any of that shit. And you have to strike out on your own in a way where people can say, oh shit, this ain't Trump and this damn sure ain't Biden. So it gives us another option. But when we didn't have that other option, and it was either Biden's extended policies through her or Trump. Country trolls Trump. Go figure that shit. I still can't believe it. I really couldn't believe, like everybody's saying. I think a wounded dog with a beer can tied around his neck will beat him. But when you think about it, it's like maybe not. Maybe not. It really lets you know how this country, the poor, the middle class, the disengaged, fall for billionaire white. That really grabs them. You know what I mean? You look at Kamala Harris as a public servant, a person who's come up, as a public servant, an elected official in California, but not an outsider, not a billionaire, not a person who has established herself in some way outside of politics, and then decided to use some of that notoriety to translate it over into this. Kamala is on the inside of the Democratic Party. Now, the admissions in her book or the things that she said, true or not true or whatever, that's her truth. That's what we have to judge her on, unless we can prove otherwise. But I don't plan on reading the book, And when a certain paragraph out of the book can make the top of their news cycle and get in there and everybody's discussing it, that's probably about the only part of her book I'd be interested in. I just can't imagine it being truthful enough for me to really go out of my way to read it expecting to gain anything from it, because I just don't really trust Kamala like that, And it would be like Trump writing a fucking book. I wouldn't buy that shit. Only because there'd be so much bullshit in it. And some people, you buy their book for their truth, for their story, for their perception. Not some old bullshit these people be doing.
To read more from the book as far as why she had people like Anita Dunn and Jen O'Malley Dillon in her inner circle, knowing what they were, putting on her when they were running the president's campaign. So I find it a little bit of an easy out.
It is interesting. I mean, she did bring in her own people to work alongside the campaign officials who were already there, but she does point fingers inside the Biden administration, to be sure. Let me read two more quotes. And this has to do with her time as vice president, Bakari, where she did not feel supported by the West Wing. She wrote, they, as in the White House, had a huge comms team. They had Karine Jean-Pierre briefing in the press room every day, but getting anything positive said about my work or defense against untrue attacks was almost impossible. Then Harris continues in these brand new excerpts, and when the stories were unfair or inaccurate, the president's inner circle seemed fine with it. Indeed, it seemed as if they decided I should be knocked down a little more.
Well, welcome to being black. You want to be black when you want to be black, Kamala. That's how it go. That's how they do you. It just is what it is. But Jean-Pierre and them, she's a part of the Biden folks. She probably didn't like Kamala shit. But she did as told, and they never told her to pump Kamala up. To think that Joe said, hey, you know what? I'm dropping out. Remember that morning she was at home making pancakes, and he called, hey, Kamala? Yeah, what's going on, Joe? Wait, hold on, I'm making another pancake. Yeah, I'm just calling to let you know I'm dropping out. What? Dropping out? Okay, bye. Not why, not where, what? Out of nowhere? She just was like, oh, wow, Doug, Joe's dropping out. Wait, can I get another pancake? When she told that bullshit story, I was like, man, my God. Just ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. For them to think that we're that dumb and that we're supposed to just buy this shit.
All right, you were an early prominent supporter of then Senator Harris in her campaign, but I know you have connections inside. What do you think of this sentiment?
Well, first of all, I didn't have connections inside the White House, and I think that's part of the reason was my loyalty to the Vice President of the United States. But Mara was right. I mean, Valerie Biden Owens, Jen O'Malley Dillon, Anita Dunn made life very, very difficult for Kamala Harris when she was Vice President of the United States. And by making life difficult for her, the reason that she had to keep him on is because she only had 107 days left. And so you can't flip the ship completely upside down when you're running for president.
That's another part of the Democratic story that pisses me off. Is that 107-day shit. That 107 days was planned and plotted and a part of their idea. That shit didn't happen by chance or by accident. Absolutely not. Are you telling me that they really didn't have a plan B for Joe Biden? That was their plan B. They really plotted this shit out and thought this shit out because they knew that was the only way they could hand pick who they wanted. And they fought over that. I'm sure there were other people they would have, but then it would have been like, well, damn. Then black people be mad because you made her the vice president. But then when it's time for Joe to fall off the wagon, somebody else got to be brought in. Like, then black people will say what they already say. Oh my God, what is this shit? What's going on over here? And everybody would be right in saying it. So they didn't want that to happen. So they was like, shit. Why we make her vice president? And I told you guys we shouldn't have picked her, because if they hadn't picked her, then the person who they really would have wanted to be their second choice would have been in that seat, and it would have been as much conflict going on. But they thought she was just going to be Joe's VP, and maybe he'd even run 2 terms. They didn't at the beginning. I guess they were under the illusion that might happen, and it didn't. And then it's like, oh shit, what do you do? And they just stuck with her. That pissed people off. Fuck. If they'd only listened to me. If they'd only listened to what I was telling them. That's what people are feeling. And Kamala is sitting there like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. She ain't been accepted in that Democratic Party like she thought she would. The people who rallied around her and pushed hard for her during her campaign, that 107 days that we speak of, who are they and where are they? Where's Jim Clyburn? Where's these people who really was fighting hard for her to be VP? Because that was a game. They knew she was only being pushed to be VP, not above that. When she ran, they did what they could do, but for her not to win doesn't seem like it bothered the key people who you think would really have thought Kamala had a chance and that they was in their heart. They all done shrunk to the back. And now she's pissed off because she don't feel like she got enough love. She don't got enough support and yada yada and all that shit. So she gonna start in her book. So you had an opportunity to concede. When you concede, say cry some tears, say that shit, and then get on up out of here. You wait sitting around plotting and drinking whiskey and shit and being pissed off at home and putting all that into a book and selling it to your donors, your campaign donors.
The United States. But it's no secret to those people in and around the White House and the vice president that there were people, one, who did not want her to be vice president because they carried this grudge from the debate in Miami.
And that's not true. That is some bullshit. They think that her and Biden clashed when she accused him of being a racist. And that's kind of weird that a person would accuse a person of being a racist if they didn't really feel that. Like, that was just politics. Or no. When you accuse somebody of being on the side of stopping what you were after, and what you were after was, I guess, segregation and getting black people, desegregation, and getting black people and white kids together. And you're saying in that debate that Biden didn't want that. And a lot of people believe that was a moment where you were standing up and pretty much saying you don't like Joe Biden. And then when he picked you as his VP, everybody's like, what? That's why it didn't look like you guys were really gonna mesh well, because it didn't seem like you had a genuine. I ain't buy the shit. I hear a lot of people saying you guys are close, you guys had a good relationship as well, and you probably did. I worked with people before that I've had good working relationships with, but in the parking lot, if I ain't gotta speak to them, I won't. Unless they absolutely almost step on my shoe or something. But if I don't go out of my way and be like, hey, good morning, work at enemy, frenemy, or whatever the hell you want to call. No, I don't even do that. But at work, I understand that it's my part of my job to be cordial and to be polite and non-threatening and make people feel comfortable in the workplace. Why wouldn't you? And I believe that that's what we're dealing with here. And it's so unfortunate that Joe Biden gets away with being white and racist. And it's because of how people are choosing to perceive and interpret his career.
All the way through. And the other thing was that when she became vice president, they just made it very, very difficult for her. And I think that when you have a vice president who has that age, who has a future, there's always this, and it's not just Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but there's always a question about ambition. And so whenever Kamala Harris did something correct or wanted to have a platform, they shot that down. When I came,
Kamala Harris wasn't a strong candidate. People who back her, people who like her, can't argue that. She was not a strong candidate. She was appointed to VP to be on Biden's ticket. But prior to that, she wasn't one of the front runners in that primary, the one from before. She wasn't the strong showing that you would expect, the top 2 or 3, where you'd be like, well, he picked her. He really diminished her. Joe Biden diminished Kamala by saying, well, I don't know who I'm going to pick, but whoever it is, they're going to be black and they're going to be female. He said that before he knew it was going to be anybody. He just said that's the criteria. Well, if you're a white guy or an Asian man or a white woman, you can go sit down. You don't click any of them boxes. He's telling you before he picked his VP who it was going to be up to a point. Not the exact person. But a lot of people's like, well, it ain't going to be me because I'm not black and I'm not female. And I'd be honest, if I was Kamala, I'd have sat down and been like, well, shit, he ain't talking about me. I'm female, but I ain't black. I'm South Asian. She benefited for that one reason. And everybody want to act like that qualifies you for being VP. It does not. And black people shouldn't be mad that she's not being looked at as a black VP or that she didn't win or any of that stuff, because it doesn't concern us, because she didn't have a plan for us. She wasn't going to do any more for us than what Donald Trump is doing for us. If she didn't take away some of the social programs or some of the funding to some of the social programs that include food and health care for the poorer people, if she would restore that or leave it the way it is, and the way Trump is pulling things out and yanking things up, that's what the 80s was like to me. That's what Ronald Reagan did. In the 90s, Clinton came along and did that same kind of shit. They attacked the bottom. The people who are rich in this country always look at people at the bottom as freeloaders. And they have to do something as presidents to show that they're not doing that. Obamacare. Why wasn't Obamacare partially or in some way being paid for by rich people? The business owners. The ones who, when someone goes to work and gets hurt and it ain't a workers' comp claim because they deny it or say they didn't do it or you didn't get hurt here, and that employee still needs to be repaired. He still needs health care, health coverage. Obama wanted to show the corporations that he could make that possible and make us pay for it. Make us pay for our own damn health care, and they wouldn't have to worry about it. All they could do is keep on making record profits and underpaying us. They all feel the same way consistently. And we can't figure that part out. Come on, y'all. And they think Kamala can come along now and sell us a damn book just because she had a glass of wine and invented.
Came on air and said that her portfolio was trash. It made news, and they were not thrilled about that. But her portfolio, when she first got started, was trash and unachievable. But things changed. And so Joe Biden and Kamala Harris love each other. The people around Joe Biden, I would say not so much.
Maura, Jeffrey Goldberg, who wrote a preamble to the excerpts in The Atlantic today, basically said the news here is that there's news, that she pushes the envelope a little bit in terms of new information out there. Take that one step further. Do you think this is news that Democrats are happy about being released this September when some of the political winds have begun blowing in their direction. The jobs numbers.
That shit ain't blow. How can low job numbers be political winds blowing in their favor? That's the fucking politics we play in this country. Oh, Donald Trump, we're not going to look at COVID. We're not going to look at any other thing. Black people, for instance. Is the unemployment higher amongst black people now on the percentage than it was when Biden was in, or Obama, or anybody else? Everybody brags about how low they get black unemployment, but it shouldn't even be spoken of so separately from other unemployment. Why can't we be judged right with others because we're not being treated like others? So our unemployment rates do tend to be higher. It's unfortunate that Kamala Harris is one of those who's willing to play that game. They all, prior to her, have been. She's not going to come along, win the presidency, and change shit. And the country feels safer with Donald Trump at the helm than they do Kamala Harris, a black woman, a Southeast Asian woman, whatever you want to look at Kamala Harris as. I look at her as a Democrat first. And if she's anybody who's a Democrat first, we got an issue, because the Democrats oppose my race. They oppose what we need to be on par with everybody else, be on our way. This illegal immigration thing will go over. It will blow past. And where we going to be in the same place? We need to get beyond this. And we can't quit letting people who support Kamala and like Kamala and think Kamala would have been a good president have these platforms to get on here and talk about something that has nothing to do with the rest of us.
Have been dismal. President Trump is taking fire on the Jeffrey Epstein situation. How much do you think this makes Democrats uncomfortable right now?
It probably makes a handful of them uncomfortable, but I think at the same time, when you have, Zohran Mamdani running in New York City and the Democratic Party is blanching to even talk about it, they have to start to get at the core of their issues and figure out what the next step looks like for them if they want to win back a midterm, if they want to win back in 2028. And so dealing with the reality of what happened in 24 is maybe the first step. And I'm sure they're not thrilled by this, but maybe they need to take a look in the mirror, especially for those who are in the inner circle who are purporting to play a role in the next few elections. They really need to be thinking about what role they played, and having it shown a light like this for Biden's inner circle, the West Wing, I think that's important because we should know who was running it.
Morgan Gillespie, Bakari Sellers, thanks to both of you. Appreciate it.
And that's what I think Kamala has seen take place in that party for so long, that's how you roll. You don't want to take something that's not broken and try to fix it. You leave it alone. You have a high number of black support. Don't be that black person or that perceived black person that gets in there and fucks this shit up. They worked a long time to get people who may not be the blackest of the black or blackety black to get in there and still do well with black people just on the strength that they have brown skin. It's about the most ignorant shit I ever heard. Like, comment, share, and please subscribe. And we will see you on the next Black Popcorn.